So, talking about HTML forms, we're talking about the inputs, which is the most popular by far. So we're talking about the inputs. This is the input. You can call this one an element, then you can call this one a tag. And I said the difference is just the presence of these stuffs you're seeing here. This is an input element, but then when we talk about the tag, we're talking about the presence of these curly braces and then some other things that are inside it. This is called an attribute. Okay, this is called HTML attributes. So anywhere you see anything that is written inside HTML, even if it's not written with equal to, something like this. For example, yesterday we dealt with a table border, something like that, Abby. So this becomes, an attribute, like an add to HTML. And as we further down the journey of programming, we are going to look at other types of it. So we're saying that this input has different types. For example, yesterday we saw the type of text, and the type of text is simply the one that we can use to type. Okay, you can use to enter inputs inside a text box, and then we say that's the type of text. So anytime you want to type anything that has to do with alphanumeric characters, it has to do with the type of what text. Okay. However, there are other ones that you can see to enter, something like text area. So I'm coming to that in a minute. All right. So let's look at them. Let's go to VS Code. Let's do some small examples there. So right now we have this file ongoing. So we have a simple form here, and in this form, in fact, the one I did online, the other one, if you check the video, which I will drop the link by maybe tomorrow morning. I'll drop the link to that video so that you can just pick it up. Even this one too that I'm recording now, I'm going to drop the link so that you can pick it up and then go through it one more time, and then so you'll be able to grab everything that you missed, maybe because of network or something. Alright, so this is what I'm talking about. So all these, like for example, this 4 is an attribute. Call it a 4 attribute. We have the type attributes, we have the placeholder attribute, we have the value attribute. There's one called value attribute, and that is what we're dealing with. Okay, and I will be covering them as we move on. Okay, but right now I'm just interested in this type attribute, which covers these things. So I'm going to mention for example, if you see this type now has text, there's another type here that has email, there's another type that has password, another type here that has what button. So they are not really the same thing. So the behavior of this element is based on the attribute given to it by this type attribute. That's what we are trying to say. Alright, and I'm going to list as much as I can list down here, then we'll explain all of them. So among the types, we have the text, which you have seen, we have the email, we have the password, we have number, we have one called tel, we have before progress, we have range, okay. From the range, we have type of URL, we have type of file. Then another type of file can also cover some things like type of image. We have type of image, type of audio, type of video, and so on, and all the stuff like that. For type of file, we have other types like type of submit button. We have submit button, we have reset button, and we have normal button. Okay. Then aside that, we have other type of stuff like we have the checkbox. We have the radio button. Okay. And then I don't know how many I've mentioned, but there are so much of them. Okay. Let's look at some other aspect of it where we have okay, let me just stay with the types for now, but we have something like date and time and all that, but most times we don't use them. Okay, we have the type of date and time, and so on and so on. There are a lot of them. I can't even begin to mention all of them, even the type of something like search, and so on. So but then I will explain what these ones are doing. I may not be able to code all of them in, but on your own, I want you to practice this things at home. When you go back to your to practice, just open up your VS Code, and the place you are seeing types, you can just put this particular element. Let me show you what I mean in a minute. So if I open VS Code, since this is type of text, I can change it to type of search, and then of course let's run our code to this place and see. You see a place written open with live server, and then you can just open with live server. And when I click on open with live server, it's going to open with live server, and then I can bring it over here and bring it over here. Alright, so I think I'll close this one for now. Alright, so this is what we did last time. In fact, it's more than this anyway. The other video had more than, I don't know, maybe this one stopped. Okay, but then this is what we did last time, and I showed us how to add small styling to it, which I'm going to still cover today. But this is the button I'm talking about. So you see that once I begin to type on this button, you see that there's going to be a close mark here. Okay, so if once I click cancel, is it clear or cancel, something like that. So if I click on this button, it's going to cancel the inputs and then make sure it's empty again. Why? The time we had a test input here, if I save, of course, remember live server, it automatically updates our page. If you come over here, you see that we can actually type something here and it stays. We can't just click it, but there's no button to click and to wipe it. Of course, later, maybe when we start using JavaScript, we can look at when we can add those button manually and then click on it. Of course, we have type of password that encrypts everything you write so that normal user cannot see it. And of course, when we get further into development, maybe towards JavaScript or so, I'll show us how to use the developer tools, how you can actually manipulate some of these things and use it for your own testing purposes and educational purposes, not for harm. Alright, then we have the email. Now there is an attribute in email. In fact, all these things they have we are going to look at HTML validation. We're going to look at validating. We're going to talk about how to use HTML to validate code, to validate your form. How to use simple HTML to validate your form. So in using HTML to validate your form, we're going to kind of restrict what the user enters here. Okay. For example, if you see here, if I hover on this button, it's going to tell me please include the @ symbol, and if I try to submit this form, like sign in here, it should give me an error telling me that I can't sign into this button. And mind you, the reason why this button is not submitting is because of the type of button we're using. I think we're using a normal button. Yeah, so we're not using a submit button, so it's not going to submit. We're using a normal button to do that. So I'm going to change it to submit button, and then by the time we save and go back to our form, I don't know what that is. Okay, if we go back to our form and try to submit this form now, okay, sorry, it's submitting, but then if I try to submit with wrong email that is not active, it shouldn't submit. You see, it will not submit. It give me an error saying please include the @ symbol before you can submit this particular email. And I'm going to show us how to change this particular message that's coming up using what we call the title attribute, and we are coming to that in a minute. Alright, so when we deal with attributes, we're going to deal with all of them. We're going to talk about the email. This validates an email. When we add an attribute, there's an attribute called required in HTML, which you can just type at the end of the tag like this. For example, this is your HTML. You can just come over here and say required. Okay, we have required, we have read only, and so on. And that's why we're using VS Code. It gives us these suggestions that we can make choice from. So I'll click on required, and then by default, it will make sure that this email is actually valid before it submits it to the server. However, if you don't want to use it, it's not compulsory. But then you can actually disable it by adding a false attribute to it, a false value to it. So you can say required and set it equal to false, and then it won't even work at all. Alright, so that is what we can do. But for now, I'm going to leave it by default. Once you add it by default, it becomes true. Okay, so save and leave it there. So let me quickly explain these stuffs, and then we'll call it a day. So we have the type of number, which allows us to enter anything that is number ranging from 0 to positive infinity, and I think you can enter negative numbers too. Yeah, anything that is integer between negative infinity to positive infinity. We have tel, which allows you to enter telephone numbers. Okay, and then we'll have apart from tel, we have other ones like range, which gives us range. Let me try that of range so we can see how that works. So from this input, I'm going to change it to range. Alright, so if I change it to range and come back to our page, we see that we have a type of range. Of course, when we deal with HTML attributes, which is going to be a separate class also, I'm going to teach us how to, change this thing. You can actually step it up so that it moves in a particular range, and also make it to be half the way and so on. Okay, I'll set the and can actually do all of that. So after that, we have the type called URL. URL is used to validate a a valid URL, to check a valid URL, which can be HTTP or HTTPS, which I explained in the first class what they mean. And then you can have www. Let's say for example facebook.com. Okay, we are having something. You can have something like login here, or maybe slash, maybe login. Let's say login Cybergate. We talked about this. Okay, how you can get all this kind of dynamic routing. So what URL type does is that it checks this. It checks for this particular coding, like this particular proxy. It checks if it's actually valid before it renders. It allows you to bypass the whatever thing, especially if you set it to required. If you make required true, it's going to check for that. We'll have the type of files, audio, video, and other type of files like documents and so on, PDF and what have you. So have that type of submit, which allows you to submit a form. Without it, you cannot submit any form unless you're using some kind of language like JavaScript. Okay, you can actually make asynchronous request to that, and then you'll be able to submit your form. We have reset button which resets all the form. For example, let's say we have, okay, let me come over to our page. Let's say we have already filled in this form with our email and password. Once we click on reset button, it's going to empty the form and make it come back as a fresh form again. We have that button that we can just use to set up a simple button that won't do anything. We just want the button on our page that we can design to use to do something. And then we'll have type of checkbox, which we use to check a button. Like, let me show you a checkbox from here. Okay, from here I'll just say type of checkbox. Okay, it's already there. So if we go over to our page and view, you see that we have a checkbox here, which you can check and uncheck, check and uncheck. And then we also have that of radio button, which we can use to do that too. So radio button and checkbox are relatively the same thing. The only difference is that this one is circular and the other one is square in shape. But then radio button cannot accept. There's a function you add anyway. You can even add it to checkbox that makes it unique, so you can select more than one value at a time. But of course, you can swap that at some point. Okay, but for now, that is the major difference between radio button and check button. This one is square in shape, so it's a kind of square in shape, while this other one is kind of circular in shape. Okay, so we have that of date and time, which you can use to format date and time to get that grade, and then we have that of search. And there are a few other ones. I think I've mentioned about a couple of them, but there are a few other ones you can still see from your. Maybe the next thing I want to talk about is other form elements. Okay, we have other form elements apart from these ones we've mentioned. There are other form elements. One of them is the select button. So for now, we are going to leave. Let's just ignore the name attribute and the ID attributes. Okay, so inside this, I'm going to have the options, and then let's also ignore the value for now. I will explain all of them when I talk about HTML entities. So let's say for this option, we have just male and female. Okay, and then want to have it as a select button, just as simple as it is. If we go back to our HTML, you see that we'll have a drop down menu that we can actually select between male and female, and that's just two options there. If I want to build one that has, for example, the states and capital or something like that, or maybe a list of options that I want the user to select from, I can actually duplicate them and then have them to be that menu. And then I will show us when using HTML entities, before entities, HTML attributes, how we can actually use this thing to capture whatever that is inside. And it's just by simply adding whatever value we want here. For example, let me just do an example here. If I want, let's say, if I can say I want male to be maybe 0, and I want female to have the value of 1, and maybe let's say, let me just say gender here, anything. Say this one will be none, for example. It simply means that each time I submit it, and then this form I have to give it a name. I give it a name, call it maybe call it students, for example. And then anytime I'm working on this form, I need this particular select button and the name is actually being connected to all these options. Of course, remember you can only select one at a time unless otherwise stated. Okay, you can actually add a function called select multiple. I think there should something called select multiple, something multiple. Yeah, you can say multiple. Yeah, and set it to, by default it's already true. And then if I set it to true, oh, if I set it to true, okay, I should be able to select multiple options. So if I go over to my code, I should be able to come over here, yeah, and select multiple options from, okay. But then we have other attributes anyway. So the day I'll cover attributes, I'll cover every single attribute. So, but on your own, you can still feel free to experiment on them. Alright. So the next one I want to talk about is called test area. Okay. Test area allows us to, again, I'll remove the ID and the list. I'll talk about them when we design a waveform. So test area allows you to type in test in a particular, in a special type of box called a test area, like a comment, box. Like for example, in Facebook, if you go to Facebook, you see a box that allows you to type in comments. And some box like this, say enter your comment. For example, if I want to say enter your comment here, I can come over here and say enter your comment. Okay, once I say enter your comment and save, I should be able to come over here and see something like enter your comment and save. Alright, so by the time I do this, I should be able to see this particular thing. And then remember that this is that I'm going to explain the difference between a value and a placeholder, and then much later we won't talk about attributes to do that. Alright, but then I can actually enter my comment. I can say I like this class room. Okay, I can do that, and then I can maybe submit or something, anything I want to do, I can do that. Gradually we'll get to those points. So apart from that, the next one I want us to look at is called the progress bar. Okay, the progress bar. So I just put a BR here. I think I actually forget to do it in the other one. Okay, the BR here. Alright, so under here I'll have a progress tag. Progress, if I write progress. Okay, let me do this way. Alright, we'll have progress button. Okay, so by just saving this, I should be able to see. Let me check. I should be able to see something. Yeah. Okay, but I didn't give it a value, so but then that's why it's in like that. So but you can actually give it a value. Again, when we do attributes, I will talk more on that. Okay, I can give it a, I think it's a value. I can give it a value, and then let's say maybe 50, and then you should say the maximum and minimum and so on. But I will talk about that in our next class. So apart from progress, the attributes of this form and the attributes in general of a form. So what I'm going to do is simple. I'm going to design a form, a sign-up form that will be as complex as possible. And the essence is to design it to cover most of these things we have, planned. And I'm going to do it in another page. Had even anybody submitted the assignment, I would have just used it for example. But then I'm going to create a new page, and that page is going to be the contact us page. This particular page, contact us page. I'm going to route this page to that. So coming up here in the header section of our website, I'm going to go to contact us page and then add the contact page there. So contact.html. Okay, contact.html and save. And then in our page, you should be able to see that contact.html. So but then I'm going to create a new file, call it contact.html. So of course we have our stuff here. So our boilerplate, let's say contacts, and then inside there, this is where we're going to design our form. So let's view contact page, how it looks like for now. So alright, so if I go back to our page, our home page, and then go up, okay, and click on contact page. When we click on contact page, we should be able to see this contact page. So now I'm going to keep this side by side like we did yesterday with VS Code by the side. Alright, so remember Ctrl B, toggle the words, yeah, okay, then alternate Z to show that up. So let's design a very simple form from the form we have just learned now. So the form we're going to be designing is okay, let me open the diagram of a form that we're going to design. Oh, okay, don't worry about the diagram anyway. I'll just design the form as a simple instruction if I have it here. Alright, so this is what we call few sets. So this few set is simply a wrapper that we can use to wrap through an object or anything. Okay, let me just say I want to type welcome here, and if I save, if you say it's going to wrap around that welcome here, so anything I type is going to wrap around it. So it's just like a box that I'm using to control the design of a simple form. Alright, so that's what I'm going to be using. It's a wrapper that we can use in our form. Now, apart from the few set, there's another one that's called legend. So legend is actually used for breaking out a line. Okay, well, you see in a minute. So I'll just say I'll just put okay, let me just put maybe user here, and if I save, you see that this legend is going to break even this line and add a text in between it. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'll just say if I let me center it by just saying center, and then under here I can say contact form, or I can just say fill this form, something like that. Anything that makes sense a little bit. If I save, and I have something like fill this form right here. Alright, so then under that I'm going to have my form get started. So what I'm going to do in this form is that since we are not adding CSS, I'm going to have all the necessary form wrap around it. So I'm going to do div. So inside that div, I'm going to have a label. So I can say label for, let's say this name. So I can say full name here. And under it, I'll put the input for the name. So I'm going to use an attribute called placeholder. Enter your full name. So now we have these four attributes. I'm going to save so you see how it works in real life. So this four attributes is not really doing much, but what it's doing is a kind of a binding. In fact, if I hover on this four attributes, you're going to see a pop-up message saying that the ID of the label form related element is the same as the document of the label element. In other words, there is a binding, there is a relationship between this label that has the full name and this guy that has the full name, which means if I click on this full name, it should automatically link this all together. So to do that is simple. All I need to do is to add an attribute called the ID attribute and make sure that the ID attribute has the same property, the same name or the same name instance as this. Okay, the same name instance as this. So if I save now and refresh this page, okay, I don't need to refresh because I'm using how to reload. So if I click on full name, automatically this one becomes active. But anything I do to this particular label, that this particular label here, automatically affects this one because they are sharing. Once I say label for name and give this one the ID that has that same name, it's going to affect two of them. And it mustn't be called name, you can call it anything. For example, I can call it favor, and then make sure I'm calling the other one favor too. Okay, then it should still work the same way. You see, if I click, it's still working. But then there's another way of doing this. Instead of typing this and this, actually double click on this. I think I showed us this yesterday, I'm not sure. I can actually click on this and then do Control D. I should be able to highlight two of them, and then if I start typing, I can type through two of them at the same time. So I want to call them favor, and then they should be having the same name, and then they should actually work perfectly now. Okay, same thing. Okay, of the same result. So that's what I can do on that. So that's the thing between these four attributes and then this ID. Whenever you do something like that, both of them are bind together. Alright, so in our next class, I'm going to explain more on attributes, and I'm going to take my time and do a video on that, and then also send it across to us. I'm going to drop a link to that video this night, so let's go through it and then get back to me